What does it take to reach these industries? Is it really just about like having money?
Money is great. My dad always tells me this. Money is great for limiting the gap between thought and reality. But it doesn't, especially in the creative field, I don't think it necessarily helps you. I've seen actually probably more people with money fail, relatively speaking, than I have, I think, with people who have less and have to really be scrappy. I think he's
Kid Super. He's incredible. He's doing so many great things right now. I love that guy.
Amazing things. He just got that LV
yes.
Design job, which is awesome.
Printing the rejection letter on that.
Oh yeah,
I was there when he got the rejection letter.
My God.
And the most successful entrepreneurs are the ones who figured out how to break and disrupt industries in that capacity.
Exactly.
So when I think about
Welcome to Season 4, Episode 1. On this episode, I had the pleasure of speaking to Nikko and Kokie. Now, excuse me while I read some information here on my screen. Nikko is currently the Chief Operating Officer of Beauty Bakery Cosmetics brand, a minority-owned, female-led cosmetics company that has raised $15 million in VC funding. Nikko also currently serves as the CEO of Iroko Treehaus. Kokie is the founder and president of Iroko Treehaus. It's a minority-owned creative consulting and investment agency whose mission is to connect the culture of the people to the business of humanity. Kokie was previously within the artist services department at Warner Music Group in New York City. Through Iroko Treehaus, the team advises various individuals and brands across a multitude of industries, while also keeping a close eye for investment opportunities in other minority-owned and led ventures. On this episode, I'm going to ask them what they do, why they do it, and how they do it. And I'm going to try to get some insight as to how they are trailblazing within the industries that they reside in. Please, if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, like the video. That helps us a lot. And if you're on streaming platforms, please share this with as many people as you can. It really helps us grow. And with that being said, enjoy the episode. Hey guys, welcome to the I Feel You podcast. With me here is Nikko and Kokie. Really excited to have you both. I've heard a lot of great things about you, and I'm excited to learn more about what you do and how you do it. And first question that I have for you guys, we'll start with Nikko and then Kokie. How are you guys feeling? And I want the most genuine answer possible. You know, of course, you don't have to divulge your whole life story, but like, how are you genuinely feeling right now in this moment?
I feel good. This week has definitely been a little bit crazy and chaotic, but you know, that's what I expect, and it definitely keeps us kind of just focused on moving forward and getting things done. But definitely a crazy week, but I feel good.
Yeah, definitely a crazy beginning of the year. Let's call it that. But overall excited. There's always a lot of exciting things, and there's always a host of challenges. So, you know, we're definitely active. Yeah.
I feel that. I know it feels like this year is going to be kind of, I guess intense is the word. I don't know. It's kind of a wild word, but like, I feel like it's going to be we're going to be going the whole year. You know, I feel like everybody's ready to like jump into life and just really go at it. So, do you guys, weird off the wall question, do you guys find time to like relax? Do you guys have the time to like sit back, be with yourselves and like just like chill? Because from the bios that everybody heard and we read, like, and I cut it down pretty aggressively, like you guys do a lot. You guys have a lot going on. You're very accomplished gentlemen. So like, do you find time to relax?
I'll let Nikko start with that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely, I look for ways to kind of disconnect at times, and I think it's an interesting question because I ask a lot of people, like, what do you do to actually relax and reset and disconnect? And I think everyone has a different activity that they will do to completely like take a break and reset, and ultimately like prevent yourself from burning out. I think that's really important. Yeah, for me, I work out, I run, and then sometimes on the weekends when I really need to disconnect, I go skydiving on the weekends.
Oh, wow.
So those are
Actually,
those are like
disconnect
I have
from the
fully
ground,
disconnect, yeah. But it's definitely I have a couple of things that I find ways to kind of take breaks throughout the day and on certain days throughout the week.
Nice. Yeah, I always tell people that I don't think I could ever see myself skydiving. I would have to be a very different person
Just
to
go with Nikko. It'll be fine.
yeah, is it chill? Is it a chill experience?
It is.
Yeah,
I've
when
done
you're
it.
ready.
It's actually very chill. I'm not even
How long have
joking,
you been how long have you been skydiving?
2.5 years now. Yeah, 2.5, 3 years.
Are you like
Yeah.
official? You go by yourself and everything
Licensed.
now, or
Yeah.
sick?
I go by myself. I go with my friends. So I've taken probably like 2-3 dozen of our friends now over the course of 3 years. Yeah.
That's nuts. That's pretty cool. What about you, Kokie?
Yeah. I mean, for me, I have Nikko knows I have a hard time sometimes turning off. So for me, I just have to use my other side of my brain when I turn off. I'm into photography, and I tend to try to do something that uses that side of my brain when I'm turning off, right? So, luckily a lot of our friends are pretty amazing creatives and models and XYZ things, so I can always just be like, hey, let's just do something. Let's go to a different location. Let's see if we can catch the light. Let's wake up at 5 a.m. to go to the beach, on like the Saturday or Sunday, or if we have Monday morning off. That's usually how I sort of turn off. But yeah, I mean, I tend to pride myself on being able to find a decent amount of balance. And
that's good.
Luckily, I enjoy usually what we're doing. So, like I said, it's nice because if I've been in numbers all day, maybe at night I have to read a script. So it's a little bit easier to, maybe look forward to some of the work at times. And then sort of use that to in a way turn off and sort of absorb it.
That's great. No, sounds like blessings all around for sure. Because one thing about being a creative and like a full-time creative, and that's kind of all you do, is that like you're kind of giving up your safe haven in a lot of ways. Like I feel like a lot of creatives get into it because it feels good and it feels like they're getting something out and expressing themselves. And when you kind of like monetize that, it becomes harder to do that for what you're talking about. Is like I do this to get away from like my work, and although it benefits my work and it makes me better at what I do because you work in a creative field, it's still more of a safe haven. That sounds like incredible. Yeah, that sounds beautiful. So thank you for sharing that. I appreciate you guys.
Yeah, no, I think I got lucky that at least with the photography, it's not a forced profession, right? So it is something that I get paid for, and it's great when I do. But there's also moments where I can just just utilize it just for literally how I want to feel and want to think. So it's I've gotten fortunate for that.
Something I was also going to say is that you mentioned going to the beach at 5 a.m. with friends to catch the light, the sunset or the sunrise in that instance. And I always say that if you take the time to wake up that early and go somewhere, drive somewhere with a group of people, that group of people, those are people you really love. Because like you got to really care about the people you're with to just literally wake up at 4 a.m. to drive. In my case, like in Orlando, Florida, there's a bunch of beaches, but I live like an hour from any beach. So like wake up at 4 a.m. to go drive out to a beach and then be there in the pitch black getting eaten by mosquitoes. Like I'm doing it because I really love the people that I'm with, and I'm excited to experience that with them. So I'm glad you have people in your life that are like that. Yeah.
Surprisingly, I have a decent amount of people.
That's good.
Yeah.
Speaking of friendships and stuff, how long have you guys known each other?
Forever at this point.
16 years.
Jeez, 16. That's
15, 16 years, yeah.
Okay.
Half our lives.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
What'd you say?
Where did you guys meet?
We met in high school, the fall of our junior year. Nikko was a new, so actually the funny story, Nikko was a new junior at a school called the Petty School, which is where we both went to high school. I had a new roommate that year named Nikolai.
Okay.
And so when Nikko arrived, my roommate Nikolai hadn't arrived. I was already on campus for preseason of the fall sport that I played for. Nikko arrived. I thought he was Nikolai. And so I went up to him and I was like, hey man, like I think you're gonna be my roommate. He was living in the same dorm. So he was like, oh, okay, cool. Like you live in AC. Okay, cool. I live in AC.
We'll go along with it.
Yeah, we both were convinced for the next couple hours that we're gonna be roommates. Then we go back to the dorm and realize we're actually down the hall from each other. But basically that was sort of the beginning of the friendship, and sort of been running together since, yeah.
That's pretty.
So,
that's actually pretty cool. Just by chance, the same names. Like that's kind of what brought you guys together.
Yeah.
That's really cool. And 16 years. I think my longest friend at this point is a decade. So I'm getting close to that, and it's wild. And have you guys been working with each other this whole time, or did you do different things and then come together at a certain time?
We're on and on. We after we graduated from Petty, Kokie went to school at Trinity in Hartford, and I went to school up in Boston at Northeastern. And we kind of started going on our separate path just with the different industries we wanted to work in. But that whole time, I think we've been scheming since we were 15.
Yeah, I was about to say, you're scheming since day one.
Truly.
If you want to consider that work, I would argue. But basically, since we, like Nikko said, we went to school, different schools, and at that time, we weren't necessarily working together, but our friendship, we've been particularly lucky that we see each other all the time. So even when, when I was in Trinity, I was probably up at Northeastern probably like 6 to 10 times my freshman year. And Nikko was down maybe a couple times. He played soccer, so not as often, but up and down. And then in the summers, there was one summer we live in two different sides of basically New Jersey. So Nikko's North Jersey, I'm the Philadelphia area. And we saw each other every weekend that summer for the entire summer. And we didn't realize until it was mid-August, and we were like, dude, I think we hung out because we weren't even really trying to plan it. We didn't plan it like that. It was just okay, cool, what are we doing? And then it was like, wait, we've been doing this. It's the whole summer. So I think, with that kind of stuff, although we were doing our own things, we were always sort of, communicating with what's going on. So, and then as things kept progressing, right, we were always just sort of supported each other. So Nikko started getting more and more into finance. I was doing more marketing and PR. I think also, we're lucky where, if we had been, if we had probably come up maybe 10 years before, our industries would have probably been a little bit more disconnected.
Wow. Okay.
But in terms of, we're both with Nikko, particularly at Beauty Bakery, and then my background in the marketing and branding space, those things now overlap just because e-commerce and branding are in the same space, right? And so as, we started going forward in our careers, we kept also coming back to each other because one was good at one thing and the other was good at other, right? Yeah. So, I'm not the best with numbers. I can now look at a spreadsheet, pretty intensely and understand how it functions.
I feel that.
But in terms of, as it was going, I definitely needed someone that can be like, oh, this is numbers. And as Nikko was sort of building and working with different branding opportunities, I definitely think there were many moments where he was like, all right, what is this? Who is this? What's going on here? And I'm like, oh yeah, this is, XYZ thing. So it's sort of definitely have had our moments where we've been apart, but always sort of had a pretty good understanding of what each other was doing. And then a couple years ago, I was able, after many years of sort of general begging and trying to figure out how I can get my best friend back, I was like, he was able to sort of join some of officially join some of the endeavors I was working on.
Incredible.
definitely took a couple.
Yeah.
At that time, Beauty Bakery was going pretty strongly, and he was
I
coming
mean,
to
no,
New
it's
York.
incredibly successful. Yeah.
Yeah, I was doing really
Mhm.
well, and he'd come to New York, and I was like, hey man, like I know BB's doing great, but there's some things here that if I got your attention on, I think we could do some really interesting things
Yeah.
together. You'd be like, okay. And then we did that a couple times, and then he really started to understand. Okay, there's something going on.
Something
here.
there.
So
Yeah. Is
that's sort
that
of what I
how it
into.
happened from your perspective, Nico?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think after I graduated from Northeastern, I was very gung ho on kind of building a career in finance,
Hmm.
and throughout Northeastern, I was in the co-op program, so we did basically intervals of 6 months at a time. We'd work for a company in our space, and then 6 months we'd be in classes, and there were 3 cycles of that
Oh
over
wow.
5 years. And so I was able to really dive into business, and when I graduated, I just kind of went, and I had an opportunity to go work for a startup company, and moved out to the West Coast. But that whole time, I have a massive affinity, and Kokie does too, for startup ventures, particularly minority-owned, minority-run ones.
Yes.
So the whole time I was kind of going through that path. I had in the back of my mind that we're eventually, like as kids, as 15-year-olds who met at a dorm room in New Jersey, that whole time we knew that at one point we would figure out a way to collaborate in some capacity, and most importantly, leverage the relationships and the networks of people that we built, not just in New Jersey or not just in Boston, but globally. I would say, like, we know probably all of the friends that we talk about. Like, we have personally met most of the people we interact with. Um,
Wow.
so I think when he came to me and said, "Hey, come to New York," um, just start being in New York, and coming out and meeting different people. I'll be able to turn you at some point. So, so I think after a few visits out to New York from San Diego, and I was living in Vegas for some time, I started to really see some of the opportunities that, as a young professional just coming out of college, you're looking at every shiny object and saying, how
Oh,
do I
for sure.
actually monetize or build this? Is
Yeah.
this for me? Is this not for me? Is it for me if I bring in two of my other friends that
Mm.
have experience in the space, right? And I think that has very much been a lot of the people who we've met over the last 10, 15 years. That's how their minds think.
Yeah.
And so that's why when it was time to kind of start working together in an official manner with Kokie, it was a lot easier for me to see what the long-term trajectory of that looked like, with the two of us actually coming together, and the world knowing, hey, they're finally actually working together in official capacity. Let's just watch these kids now do what they need to do. And that's kind of how it was in my head when I made that decision.
That's incredible. That's really cool. And we're gonna talk more about after a little bit later. We're gonna talk more about what you look for when you're investing, or when you're finding what you said earlier was minority-led, minority-owned companies. I definitely want to get into that. But before that, just so everybody understands, what is Iroko Treehaus? And also, have you seen in your bio and in a few things that you've posted and talked about, there's also objectively good media. And I want to understand kind of the relationship between everything and what those are, so that people at home can know.
Kokie, you want to go with that?
Yeah. So there are two sort of different entities at this point. I'll explain Iroko Treehouse, and then I'll sort of get to objectively good. So Iroko Treehouse functions as a boutique creative consulting agency. The initial premise was, to build a treehouse in an Iroko tree with all my friends. Very basic in that way. Obviously Nikko and I, sparing I really out of Nikko and my friendship. I just shout out my sister because she helped me come up with the name, and she would be very remiss if I did not mention her at this point.
Credit.
Credit is where credit is due. But that was the basic premise of it. I realized in New York while working at previously at a major WPP PR firm, and then eventually at Warner Music Group, that when you come out of college, and when you're in college and in high school, you're looking up to people, right? You're really looking up to the people that you want to be, and the great people around you see on TV and on socials and whoever inspires you, that's what you're sort of looking up to. And then what I realized when I was out of school, and this happens to some people while they're in school if they're lucky enough, the people I was quote unquote looking up to, I wasn't actually looking up, I was looking across. Right. So I was looking across the table at my peers and the people around me, that people like Nikko, like a lot of people in our network, where I was like, well, these aren't people not that I don't respect or admire, but I don't need to look up. These are people that are sitting across from me. These are my peers. And so I really started trying to focus on creating a business that could activate and engage that community, engage that network. So, we really started working on really branding and marketing opportunities, and general consulting, with really up and coming brands. And that's really the based premise of Iroko Treehaus. At the same time, we started building out, because the network, we were working as managers with some artists and creatives. And then we were doing really small form, productions, really focused really within our client base. So if we were working with the brand, right, we'd also, help produce the campaign and put it together at XYZ, things like that. So that's the initial and sort of the function of Iroko Treehaus. It also has, a small investment arm, where, we're able to participate in some investments on certain companies that we really find interesting. But that's not really I think the major function of the company, but it is something that we have done in the past. And so, I was able to start that company really right after leaving Warner Music Group, able to convince Nikko to start to come in and help provide some structure there, as the CEO. We pulled in another partner of ours named Mo Care, I describe Mo as a friend who's good at everything. He's truly one of the most brilliant people that I know. Truly a unique personality and truly a unique mind. It's an amazing individual. But was able to convince him to come in. And then we sort of, we were able to work for a couple of years, just really, on the consulting tip, like I said, functioning and building out our talent management, as well as building out the small production. At the same time, a good friend of mine, this is sort of how we got to OG and OGM. A good friend of mine started another production company called Pinky Promise, and was able to produce some really amazing pieces there, and then left Pinky Promise at the time in which he left. Again, this is someone I've known since I was about fourth grade, so wow, known for quite a long time. I have a deep network of people that I'm still close with, from all the way back to fourth grade through obviously high school, college, and up until more recently.
It's impressive.
But he left the company, did some really amazing things there. We've been trying to work together previously. When he left, we talked about figuring out ways to work together, and really presented another opportunity to start a new company called Objectively Good. And that functions and that sort of expands some of the things we're doing with Treehouse, but really takes it to another level where it functions as a full service production entity, where we're now focused really on producing and developing TV shows, movies, and podcasts. And then we really have expanded the management side of the company, where we've now really signed a full litany of talent clients that range from TV, film, actors, comedians, models, musicians, right? So it's really general creators. It's a pretty robust roster, and generally all in entertainment. And so we, as you said, we stay busy, we stay active.
Yeah, seems like it.
Yeah, both companies allow us to sort of use our different sides of our brains. Now Treehouse very much functions primarily just as a consulting agency, which has been, I think, a little bit nice for us to be able to do that and then focus on what OG and OGM is doing. For sure. But so that's sort of the genesis of that, and the real sort of, I skipped over this, but the sort of tagline for at least Iroko Treehouse is connecting the culture of people to the business of humanity, meaning that we
Mm-hmm.
sort of function as the conduits between um, culture and people, right? And then between business and humanity, right? So we're the
Yeah,
ones that help, you know, connect those two entities to one another.
for sure.
Yeah.
Wow, that's great. Thank you for the rundown. That's all very well said, and it's exciting to hear how far you guys have come within this. It seems like there've been so many iterations of what you guys are and what you do, and it seems like you guys are finding, or you guys have had your stride this whole time, and now seeing a lot of positives from that. So it seems, I mean, that's incredible. You guys have a pretty interesting insight into a lot of different industries, mostly creative, but like there's so much like that you listed off of the talent that you manage and the industries that you are a part of. If you guys don't mind just talking a little bit about what you see within these industries and how do you feel about the current state of them? Because you talk about, culture and people, business and humanity. A lot of the times people get all of those things a little bit confused, and there are a lot of issues that present themselves because of that. And I'm sure you guys have seen, but there are a lot of young people within these industries as well. And I'm sure, with managing those people, you see how kind of lost a lot of people are, and how, in conversations with these bigger companies that are producing so many things, like I'm sure as a young person that's pretty intimidating. So if you guys don't mind sharing, like, what has been your experience within these industries and how do you guys feel they are doing currently?
Want me to start?
It's been the wild,
Yeah, go
wild
ahead,
west.
Nico. Yeah.
I'll start. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think, and I have a different perspective because I come from a completely different industry. So now this is my second or third industry where, I tell people my background. They're like, well, you haven't been in this space before. And then I introduce my team, and I think people get why. At least in my experience, I've been able to kind of move into new industries, and I do it with people that I trust who have experience and have the business acumen to say we can actually do this together. But for the creative consulting, the media, the management space, I think it is very much as we describe it, the wild, wild west. I think that there are best practices across the board when it comes to how things are expected to be and what they are. And I think the challenge, as a younger person in the industry, is being able to navigate the certain relationships and the channels to help people and help people amplify what they're trying to do. Particularly, when you look at the management side, which Kokie can probably talk to a little bit in more depth, I think that it is a very intimate relationship that you need to build with someone because you're dealing with someone's life. And I think it's important for managers, across the industry and anywhere, to understand that, because you really are building the trajectory of what this person, what this individual is capable of doing. And, you're going to rely on them as much as they're going to rely on you. I think one of the things that allows people to succeed on the management space, but also on the media side is, and I go through this all the time, I think, in all of my, all the places that I've worked, all of the teams that I played for growing up playing soccer. I think the biggest thing is identify the team that you're going to work with and focus on finding the right team first. You will fail a lot. And you need the people around you who are going to be able to support one another to get through very difficult times. Entrepreneurship, startups, even, starting a new career. I think you just have to come to acceptance with the idea that it is not going to be easy. If it was easy, everyone would be here, right?
Yeah.
I probably talk to more entrepreneurs and founders that have failed than the ones that we talk to that have succeeded. And I think most of the lessons come in hearing about the failures of a lot of entrepreneurs, because that's really where you can understand certain risk factors whenever you're going into a new industry for me, or a new career for someone else. So I think really focusing on that team and then navigating your relationships in the space make a very big difference especially in LA, especially in media. I think your reputation is everything. And it's really important to, continue to grow those relationships and honestly, like if you love what you do, it's gonna work out for you. And understanding, that people, there are going to be people who don't want to help you. There are going to be people who want to help you, and you got to focus on those who are going to help you. Because at the end of the day, you're determining your path through this industry, and if you know who you're working with, I think you can do a really great job with kind of moving forward with your mission and your company.
For sure. So well said. Yeah, and I think that that's something that I learned. I mean, in the past few years, so this podcast, I Feel You, is produced by Project Feel, which is a collective out here in New York City that is going through a lot of changes right now, and where we are adjusting to our team, making sure that what we're doing and how we go about making this company successful is based on the strengths that our team has. And I think that we've always been blessed to have a really strong team in a lot of ways, even though we're all inexperienced in this field in terms of how we came into it. I think we're all learning a lot because we're in it together. And, I feel like when you're with a group of people that you really understand and that understand you, everything just goes that, one step further in terms of your growth and the direction that you're heading in. It's the more people you add, as long as they fit within that mold that you have, the further you can get as a team and an organization. So that's really great advice. And talk a little bit more, if you guys don't mind, like because you say, you help a lot of these artists and these people within these communities to get ahead in, of course, their industries. What are you guys looking for when you're talking about like finding artists or managing people? Do people come to you, or is it something that you go out to find people to help along, or like, what does that look like?
I mean, for the most part, and this has been, Nikko and I have been particularly lucky with this. We have just a really, really amazing network, right? So a lot of the way we even got into this was, again, these are most of the people that initially we're working with, and the brands and everything that we're working with. These are friends, right? These are people that we know on a personal level, and then we started sort of having conversations around business. So the focus is less around, the first artist I worked with, I told him 3 times no, right? Just because I was like, I'm not interested in doing necessarily management, but I think I can help you, relatively speaking. And that's sort of been the case for most of the people I've worked with. I'm like, I don't want to do this, but I love you, and so let's see how this goes. To Nikko's point, sometimes you fail, sometimes you succeed, sometimes you learn. Every time you learn. But I think that when you're looking for talent, we really look for people that we think we can actually help, right? So it's less than, like Nikko said, it's really about, especially on talent management, these are people's lives. So whether, even if it's a year contract, 2-year contract, 3-year contract, or longer, you want to take it pretty seriously because, especially on talent management, you're helping them with their career, but you also need to make sure that they're functioning as a person. Because if they're not functioning as a person, it makes it a lot more difficult for them to function as a career. So our style has always been, really care about the person first, and then let the sort of chips fall as they may. And like I said, we've been really lucky where a lot of the people around us are really just talented. So it makes for things to be a little bit easier that way, and get a lot of these people to come to us. Just because of either the previous network or connections or the interactions we've had with them, it makes things a little bit easier in that way.
And in your experience, for you both, do you feel like Iroko Treehaus, in terms of how they approach people, and when it comes to management, or even when it comes to consulting, or the variety of things that you guys did before, in your experience, maybe seeing the way other companies do it, or other agencies do it. Do you feel like Iroko Treehouse does that different? Is that like a trend that's happening with more of these companies where they're trying to think about the people more often, or do you feel like you guys have something that's pretty unique in terms of that?
I think it's definitely, I don't know if it's a trend. I think it's a thing that sort of comes naturally, right? I think, especially when I started Treehouse, there's a bunch of different managers and companies that I was sort of looking at as reference points, right?
Yeah.
In terms of, one of my favorite artist managers is a guy named Shep Gordon, who did Alice Cooper and Teddy Pendergrass, and he's just really an amazing dude. I got to meet him one time. He was doing a talk. And he was doing things. He did Emerald. He created Emerald, and the concept of this sort of celebrity chef. He's been doing this since the '60s, basically, right?
Yeah.
And he is I think one of the best epitomes of one of those managers that had a handshake deal, but everything went well, relatively speaking, right? I've also seen the opposite and learned from other more bigger agencies, and people that were doing it in a lot more of a truly business focused manner, and I think that's been super helpful in that way too. So I think that it's more of like sort of taking all the things that are around you and then doing it yourself, right? Treehouse and a lot of things we do are really predicated on the people that we are. There's a saying in my dad's Nigerian, there's a Yoruba proverbs that goes, "People are the currency of life." Pat call. And so in terms of that's what we try to embody from our company, right? Understanding that, we really are, we are really an extension of the people who are around us, and the people around us are an extension of us, right? So, how can we best really improve that, and how can we best align with the people and the companies that we're working with? So I hope that answers it.
No, that's a great answer. Yeah, no, I do appreciate. Do you have anything to add to that, Nikko?
I guess the only thing I'll add to that is, when I think about the uniqueness of Iroko Treehouse, there are a lot of agencies out there. It's not like we're the only agency, different sizes, different backgrounds, and they're doing a lot of different things. But when I think about what the core competency of Iroko Treehouse is, I really think, to what Kokie just said, it is very much in the people that are in Iroko Treehouse, and then, the roots, the people in our lives who we have established relationships with over the years. And I think that's a really important piece because I advise a lot of like younger people coming out of college and, always giving tips and stuff. And I think one of the things that I say is that while you're young, especially when you're in college or you're a recent grad, take advantage of who you are, where you are in your career. Because when you're young, you're building a lot of these relationships because people want to help you. As you start to get older, I think the dynamic of meeting new people changes because there's more of a transactional focus, especially in the space that we work in, to reach out to someone because you're looking for something rather than because you're interested and you want to learn more about them. You have to understand that is very much something that happens often, and it's subconscious for a lot of people, but I think that's what makes us very different is that a lot of the people who we still work with to this day, I was laughing in my head at the beginning of this talk because Kokie and I, our closest friends are from high school, not from college. Most of people's closest friends are from college.
Yeah.
We have a group chat with like 10 or 15 people who we met when we were 14 years old that we still talk and we visit each other's families, even if their families aren't there. And I think those are the types of like really strong roots of Iroko Treehouse that allow us to bypass that level of, I don't know who you are, I don't trust you, which I think happens a lot when you're building new companies. We skip past that and say, I've known you for 10, 15 years. I know your parents, I know your brother, I know your sister, I know your grandma, I've stayed at your house, I've traveled with Kokie's family many times without him on vacation. It's
useless. It makes no sense. Not even invited.
Those types of it's those types of relationships that I think really set us apart in the industry that we're working in. And you know, even when we have new business or new clients, or prospective clients, it is very apparent once you walk into our house slash office that the people around us very much are what we represent. And I think that's why it's very welcoming to a lot of people. It's also why a lot of people come to us and say, hey, I have this person who is looking for representation and looking for a manager. I love you guys personally, but professionally, I see what you guys are doing. Naturally, a lot of these become inbound leads rather than us having to go to, you know, all these other agencies and try and pitch for new business. So I think that that's a very unique point of Treehouse in terms of what we bring to the space.
And the name embodies that so well, just so properly. And I appreciate that so much. And it's great to hear from me as a young person that's, you know, trying to breach into these industries and stuff. It's the people that I do it with right now. Like I said, like my two best friends who I've been doing most of what I do with. I've met them in high school, like the same way that you guys are talking about. Like I met them junior year. I met my best friend in, you know, the fall of my junior year, and we were in the class together and we just vibed. And then, you know, I joined musical theater, and that's how I got into acting and, you know, the singing and dancing and stuff like that. But he was already in it, and his energy was something that I wanted to emulate because I respected him. And it was similar to like how you were saying, Kokie, about how looking up instead of looking across. Like that's exactly how I felt about him. And when I finally got to the point where I felt like I was not even as good as him, just like we were doing the same things together and we had a mutual respect, I realized, like you did, that we were sitting across from each other. And your stories, the way that you guys talk about them, that I relate to them so heavily. And I'm sure that there are so many people listening that relate to them as well, because especially right now, mostly it's my friends that listen to the podcast, of course, because, you know, we're growing a little bit slowly, but it's slowly but surely, right?
That's how it's gotta go.
Yeah, exactly. But a lot of them relate to this, and I'm sure a lot of them have maybe never even heard this from someone who's within these industries, someone who's a successful, I guess, businessman. I guess I don't know how you would say it, but like entrepreneur.
I don't know how successful we are yet. We're getting there. I'm always one to be like, you know, we got work to do. So
no, for sure, yeah, and I think that's a great thing to see as well. But like just hearing from somebody basically saying like the relationships you build early on in your life, especially when you're young, even if those relationships don't seem like they're going to benefit you right then and there, the short term, right? You never know who that person is going to be 10, 15, 20 years from now. And if you genuinely care about who that person is, they will remember that, and you'll have a mutual respect that's already there. You don't have to fight through any barriers that you're going to have, like if you just are approaching someone because of their stature, because of what they do in an industry. Like it's really difficult, and then oftentimes doesn't really work. So, and it just goes to show as well, is because we talk about, sorry to take up so much time, but like community is like so important. The people that you interact with on the daily, and the people that you might even doubt in some ways, because like you're like, oh well, they want to do this, but like, are they really doing that? And like they don't seem like, it doesn't seem like they're working too hard for this. And it's like, do I really want to collaborate with that person in this kind of way? It's like, well, no, you should be thinking about the potential that person has, especially later down the line in life, thinking about what makes them special right now, you know, and how you can help that person and support that person in that way. And it seems like kind of how you guys do a lot of your stuff is just, like you said, the roots, the relationships that you guys built from so early on. Like the fact that you have a group chat, 10 to 15 people from high school, there's like an obscure Facebook page somewhere on my thing that's like people still randomly popping out saying like, hey, are we going to do a reunion? I'm like, I don't even know you guys. Like it's been 10, I don't know any of you. I maybe know 10 of you guys.
Yeah, we've been lucky where, you know, I actually was talking to our high school headmaster earlier today, who I just touch base with, you know, not even maybe once a year, maybe once every other year, but you know, it's still a very strong relationship. Like Nikko said, we have a very strong group that with a decent amount of our other friends. And I really appreciate what you're saying about the, you know, sort of people's potentials, right? I think what Nikko and I have also realized is that, you know, a lot of our friends, regardless of industry, you know, it really is about being genuine with them. And you never know who can help you with what. I think some of our most helpful friends don't know anything about what we actually do, right? But they are able, and they are successful, to your point, in their own right, where it's like, hey, like, oh, now I'm doing this, and it's like, oh, well, I'm doing that. Oh, okay, cool, right? And I think that, as Nikko was sort of alluding to, it helps break that barrier of like, well, you're only talking to me because now I'm the CEO or the MD of said company, right? It's like, well, no, I've been your friends when you had no friends, and I don't particularly care. But it's really nice that you're doing that.
Yeah,
and, you know,
I'm happy for you.
I'm really happy for you.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Maybe there's crossover, but also maybe there's not, and that's just what you do, right? And I think that a lot of our friends a lot of people around us are more like that, where it allows for us to, you know, cross-pollinate, where it's like, okay, cool, like, oh, well, I want to do this. Do we know anyone who's, oh, yeah, that person's
that
doing
one
that.
guy from that one class who did that
okay,
one
let
thing.
me reach out. Oh, okay, cool. And then it's a little bit more, and it's like, oh, last time I talked to you, we had a really great interaction, and it's, you know, how's your sister, or how's your mom, or how's your, you know, and then you sort of go from there. So, you know, I think that's again, we're fortunate, really fortunate, right? Where we've had a pretty positive experience. And I think we also, you know, try to be a place for other friends to come and have that same experience, right? So, you know, as Nikko was sort of alluding to, when people do come to us, sometimes a lot of people just show up and they're here.
Yeah.
And, you know, people are like, why don't you ask them for anything? It's like, well, you know, they feel they don't, you know, they need a place to come rest their head, right?
Yeah.
And people tend to remember that, where you know, you give them that space for that kind of interaction. And, you know, again, I'm wearing Kid Super, who's a friend of ours, and I think he's
Kid Super. He's incredible. He's doing so many great things right now. I love that guy.
Amazing things. He just got that LV
yes.
Design job, which is awesome.
Printing the rejection letter on that for the runway.
I was there when he got the rejection letter.
Oh my god!
Like, I was actually in the, but I can tell you for a fact, his reaction was, "Okay, cool. I'm going to Paris." Right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, let's do this. Like, cool, I got rejected. All right, so let's finish the dresses. And, you know, it wasn't even, you know, but when, you know, someone like that, you know, he really is a great person of, like, part of the reason he's so successful is his network is insane, and he does give people such a, you know, I know so many artists that have stayed and lived in that Kid Super space for nothing, right? For absolutely nothing.
It's incredible.
And it's led, you know, for him to really be one of the more successful and one of the more authentic designers.
Authentic, yes.
Especially coming out of the U.S. and particularly New York. And, you know, those are the type of people that we've also, you know, sort of all three of us, at least at Iroko Treehaus, all have pretty strong interactions with Colin day-to-day basis. And, you know, those are things that you pick up on, right? In terms of like, hey, like, you know, I used to throw Colin's birthday just for fun, just because I was like, Colin, I'm your friend, and your birthday parties are insane, and you need someone that actually knows what to do, right? Like, so now I'm throwing your birthday, and this is what's gonna happen.
That's
right?
funny. I was gonna show up to one of the, I think it was like a Halloween.
It's always a Halloween party.
But it was like he was just kind of like show up, and I was like, you sure? Like, everybody could just pull up, like, just like that.
Yeah, just come. Just come. It's nuts. It's
so cool.
But it's fun.
Chaos.
Did you guys both go last time?
No, I did not. No. I don't go. I can't. Not that I can't go anymore. I tend to actually not even be in New York, but it's always chaos. Even when I was doing it, it was chaos, right?
Yeah.
Because with him, you don't know. Like, it could be a kid from, you know, Lower East Side or from Uptown to show up. It could be ASAP Rocky and Russ. You know, It could be Joey Badass. It could be, you know, the bodega guy, right? So, like,
that's the bodega guy.
You know, like, this is that's a normal, you know, that's his normal birthday party, right? So,
and it just pops off, yeah. That's wild.
It just pops off. I think he had Waka Flocka perform last time.
Jesus Christ.
Last year was Waka
That
Flocka.
was probably
was Waka
fucking
Flocka.
nuts, dude.
It was nuts. It was nuts. It was absolutely insane.
No, that's crazy.
But
No,
he's
but-
great. He's great.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for sharing about just I can't get up. I'm gonna be thinking about this all night. This is kind of how it happens. I just feel so connected to what you guys are saying, and I can just apply it to my life so deeply. So I really do appreciate that. To go off a little bit, would you both consider yourself entrepreneurs? Yeah.
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 Yeah. A little more hesitant, but
Yeah.
you definitely are. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, no, I'm a person that it's gonna sound I'm very millennial of me. I'm not one to, I just sort of do things and then I have to label it afterwards, and then people are like, "Oh, why is this not labeled?" And I'm like, "Why does this have to be labeled?"
I don't know.
So I don't like labels.
I feel that. So
Well, yeah.
when you guys are within these industries, what do you, for young people that are, because a lot of the people that are listening are going to be young people that are aspiring and looking up to you guys in a lot of ways just because of what you do and how you do it. What does it take to get into that, to breach these industries and be a trailblazer like I would consider that you guys are? Is it really just about like having money? Like, is that a part of the equation that's really big and gets you in the door easily, or is it kind of like inflated and it's not as important as you guys as people think it is?
I think I'll start, and Nikko, you can say.
Yeah.
Money is great. My dad always tells me this. Money is great for limiting the gap between thought and reality. So, if you have a lot of money, relatively
That's beautiful.
speaking, and you want to do something, it's really good at that, right? I want to get to San Diego, and I have 3 hours, and I have enough money to get a PJ. I'm going to get to San Diego in less than 3 hours, right? But it doesn't, especially in the creative field. I don't think it necessarily helps you. I've seen actually probably more people with money fail, relatively speaking. Or mismanage things than I have, I think, with people who have less and have to really be scrappy. Most of the times, it's really just about how dedicated you are, right? Are you willing to, again, I'll bring up Colin, it's Kid Super. People now see him, get the LV job, and it feels like almost like an overnight success. But I met Colin in 2012 when he was the only one wearing his own clothes. And the only one who was standing out, and had got himself kicked out of his dorm room at NYU for selling clothes and spray painting his walls, right? So, when I've had many conversations with him about your business is going to fail and you are not making, are you making money, or is your business trademarked? And I think throughout all that, he's a great example, sort of, I like to sort of take things off of us and sort of look at some of the people that are around us, but he's a great example of unrelentless and unwavering dedication to what you're doing. It's good, as Nikko's pointed out, it's going to be really tough. Like, there's not going to be, this is not an easy road once you get on it, right? You have to have a certain amount of fortitude, a little bit of a little bit of ignorance, and a lot of faith in yourself and the people around you. Because it's going to be tough. It's going to be really difficult and taxing and trying. But if you really believe in it, you have an opportunity to succeed, right? Because you might not succeed, right? And it's really, I think, the big thing in any industry when you're trying to be, if in any industry, if you're gonna do anything, it's got to be, you really just got to be dedicated to it, because it's not easy. It's really not something that will be easy, and what looks like an overnight success for a lot of people really is a 12-year journey. And that's not a bad thing, right? There's also levels to it, right? We've met people that are really quote unquote successful young, and then things sort of taper out and they have to go through their ups and downs. And then we've met people that, are in their 50s and 60s, and you're like, whoa, that's really what I want to be, right? But it's also taken 35 years of a lot of things that no one's seen, right? There's a lot of really late nights that no one's going to be there for. There's going to be a lot of early mornings that no one's going to be there for. There's going to be a lot of really trying times where everything's gonna feel like it's a completely, falling, everything's breaking and falling down all around you, and it's that's really a lot of it. And then there's some really nice moments in between where but it's I think that there's a lot more moments of really, how dedicated you're going to be, and if you're going to do it, you really got to do it.
Yeah.
And again, also, if it's not for you, it's not for you, in terms of the entrepreneurship, stuff. Like, I think there's, and Nikko and I actually talked about this a lot, I think there's a sort of a myth that everyone needs to be an entrepreneur. I don't think that that's the case, right? I think there are people that want that and thrive and do well there, and I think there's a lot of people
feel like they should,
or feel like they should, and I feel like there's a lot of people that are really important to the structure of society, right? Like, I think that there's actually, some of the structures that we have in society are not a bad thing. They're there for a reason. Systems give predictability. Predictability allows for relative peace, right?
Safety.
And safety, right? And accountability, relatively speaking. So, I think that you also need to understand and recognize who you are, and where you fit and what your strengths are. So, like, sort of like in the long term, like, if you're really dedicated to it, go out and do it. Be ready for the ups, be ready for the downs. And then, if it's not for you, find what gives you that structure, that peace, and that sense of purpose and stability that you want in life. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, I definitely agree. Nikko?
Yeah. So, I mean, I was just thinking as Kokie was saying this, but there have been many a times that I can remember over the last 10 years being in the startup world, where I've come into question and legitimately have said to myself out loud or in front of a mirror, like, why am I doing this? Why am I trying to start something from here when I can just go online and apply on LinkedIn for a regular job, and they're going to give me a salary, and I'm going to get all these benefits. I get an hour lunch. I only have to come in at like 9, and I'm out. These ideas, right?
Yeah.
And I laugh about it because I think I can only survive that life for like a week or two. And the reason why is because, which what Kokie was saying earlier, like, it's very challenging. If you truly are an entrepreneur, you'll know, because your mind doesn't want to shut off. And at all times of the day, you're constantly thinking of ways to innovate or create or do something special. We just had a close friend of mine who was just who just traveled to Africa with Kokie. Shout out to V Live. I was just talking to him, and what he was saying was, comes back. This is his first trip to Nigeria and Ghana, and he was saying to me, Nikko, there's so many opportunities here. There's so many things that we can do. We need to get on top of this. And I was like, this is great. This energy is amazing. And I said, we absolutely can. Like, we have the network, we have the people. And I told him, I said, listen, 10 years ago, or more than 10 years ago, when Kokie took me to Cameroon and went to Kenya, I kid you not, we were on the plane going from Cameroon to Kenya. And I think I was in the chair behind him. And I was like, I had my notebook out, maybe like a couple hour flight. I had my notebook out, and I was like, here are the different ideas that I noticed while we were driving to his house in Cameroon. I was like, okay, these roads, they're not efficient. We need to figure this out. There's a lot of electric opportunities, right? And it was funny because those are the types of things where you're just like, why are you thinking of these things? Kokie told me these places, like, you're not meant to make sense of this. It's not meant to be logical. But for me, that's how my mind was constantly thinking, like, and that's how I knew that I have to be entrenched in something that I love to do, and I will work forever, making sure that I can help my team and help the mission forward. And I think if there's one thing that I've learned, it's, to survive in this industry, you have to have the stomach to be able to deal with the downs, because some of them are very tough. And it will challenge you to ask you if you want to quit and go get a corporate job or do something that is safe and stable. Like, this is not, entrepreneurship is not that. We hear a lot about that because we read about all the success stories, but for every one success story, there's probably a dozen
Yeah.
failures. And the other thing is to do well in this industry. And I think I'm still trying to figure out, Kokie's still trying to figure out, how do we continue to level up in this space? I think you have to come in and have the willingness to learn, and you have to be curious, because there's a lot about new industries that you learn about. And if you don't approach the industry with an open mind, and you think and you try and impose your ideologies on a certain space and say, this is the standard, this is best practice, then you're never going to create something new, because you're going to go with what is established. And the most successful entrepreneurs are the ones who figured out how to break and disrupt industries in that capacity.
Exactly.
So when I think about all of this, one of the sayings that I was watching Shark Tank a couple of years ago, and I was like, that's great. Chris Sacca, when he was a guest judge, he said to one of the people who were pitching, he said, ideas are great, but execution is everything. And, to your point earlier about having money, does that make a difference? I think having money is just one piece of the overall puzzle. We've seen a lot of people take in a lot of money and they failed. We've also seen people with no money succeed. And because of that, you have all of these other investors and such support them, because why? They're able to think in a very tight box, how to be creative about growing something with a very scarce amount of resources. And those are the people who I think end up being the most successful entrepreneurs, because you can put them in a box and they will figure out how to get out if their hands are tied behind their back and there's a blindfold over their face, right? And so when we think about the people that we work with, that we collaborate with, these are some of the things that we look for and say, how scrappy can this person be in this field with what they have? Because if they can prove that they can do something with very little help, the sky's the limit if we put resources behind them.
Yeah.
So I think for anyone listening to this, like that is definitely something that you want to focus on, is keeping an open mind and just, the bad days are going to come. They will come frequently. Have that in your head, that see the long picture of what you're going to do. And like I said in the beginning, have that team around you that wakes you up and says, get out of it. Like, we're going, because you get in your head a lot as an entrepreneur. And it some of that journey, even though you work with a team, some of that journey is lonely, and you have to come to acceptance with some of this journey being lonely.
Yeah. No, you said a lot of amazing things there, and a few things, like something you said about the lows being pretty low. And this is something I always think about, and it's something that I learned pretty early in life, is that if you want to, if you want to reach those heights, if you want to get those highs, the lowest lows come with that. There's always the balance. The higher you get, the longer the fall. It's the classic balance of life. And the thing that's going to prove it to you when you do get to those highs is how you handle those lows and how you get back to where you were before. I think that's a rule of life in general, but it really does apply, especially in the world of being an entrepreneur or just a creative at all. And something else you mentioned is that, coming into these industries and being willing to learn and be curious. A lot of people just want to go in to break shit. Basically, they just want to walk in and just break everything before they even understand what those things are there for. It's a classic film rule is you have to understand the rule before you break it. That's like the classic rule over all time that you learn pretty early on in college, is like, that you understand why these things are here and how the work that people put in to establish those rules, because they tried things. You have to be certain that they tried those things and it didn't work. And sometimes you have to try them yourself. Sometimes you have to, bend those rules to see what happens. And that's where a lot of the, like you said, the disrupting comes into play, is understanding them to the T and then finding ways to bend and break those things. So many wonderful things that you said, both of you guys. Thank you so much for being here. One thing to just end us off is, I always end the episode with, one, how can we, support, if as an audience in any way, are there things that we can go look at or put our views on or the likes on, or, do whatever we can do to push and support you guys. And then also, if you don't mind leaving us off with some words of wisdom. You guys have been dropping a lot of those things today, but like if if you had to give a final word of wisdom that people can learn from Kokie and from Nikko, what would you guys say? We can start with Kokie. Take your time. You don't have to.
I mean, for words of wisdom, in terms of, I'm in behind the shadows, guys. So, if you meet us, if we deal with you guys, that's great. I'd love to, all that. But I'm not really one to over promote in that way. So I'm not going to give you that. But in terms of words of wisdom, I think, Nikko's heard me say this 1,000 times. We grew up in this school of OOI, which if you know, hashtag regards. That's again, if you but
if you know.
The two major things, I mentioned one earlier, is people are the currency of life, Pat Call.
Yes.
Right. So really, the people both around you and people that have shaped you, really, and Nikko and I are very much direct products of that. The way we function as a business is very much direct product of that. And the other one is chance favors the prepared mind. And I think that, especially in entrepreneurship in particular, you really just got to be ready for anything. And when you are, an opportunity presents itself. If you're not, that chance tends to sort of disappear there. So
yeah,
those are the two things that at least we focus on internally. And I think those sort of guide a lot of the decision making and the way that we look at the world and things that we do in our business.
Incredible. Nikko?
Yeah. There's so many different things, and I think I'm going to the quote that I think I'll leave everyone with, not a quote, but just the saying that same thing here. If you know, you know. At the end of every call, and this has definitely been something that has allowed me to, in difficult times, just step back and take a breath and be able to understand certain difficult situations, is that very simply, one step at a time. And that itself, we have been in some challenging situations over the course of like the last 10, 15 years. And I think one of the things that I've learned a lot was that you can't think rationally unless you're calm and you're able to settle your mind around things. And it's very easy, especially in entrepreneurship, to say the house is on fire, but it's really not on fire. There's just a little room that's on fire, but in your head, the whole house is on fire.
You see the smoke.
To kind of be able to step back. Yeah, you see the smoke and you're just like, everything's done. I'm done. It's finished. It's finished. I've been there many times. But yeah, just truly take it one step at a time. Just believe that any issue, no matter how difficult a challenge it is, you're going to get through it. But you have to take it slowly and figure out kind of how you're going to gradually get through it. That's the most important thing, not try to advance all the way to the end. So, and yeah, as Kokie said, we love meeting people. We're not trying to push anything particular, but we definitely love networking. We have a great community around us, and I think that's one of the reasons why me and Kokie have the feeling of we love LA. We met a lot of people who don't like LA. We love LA, and I say that because of the community that we are around is extremely supportive, creative, all doing different things, and that really has been a major factor in the things that we're able to do, the people who we're able to meet, the relationships we're able to build. So you can find us out here all over the place. But yeah.
Nice.
By Nikko in the Sky.
Oh, yeah.
If you ever, you'll see us out sometimes.
We'll find you somewhere. No,
we're there. We're real people.
Yeah. I was going to say, for most of the people that talk about not liking LA, if you don't like LA because of the people you met, it's because you're not surrounding yourself with the right people, because the right people are everywhere. You can find the right people anywhere. You can hate it for the traffic, you can hate it for the heat, you can hate it for a bunch of other things, but if you don't like the people, it's because you're not meeting the right people. So that's a great call out for sure. Yeah, thank you guys so much for being here, for sharing so much wisdom and knowledge with us. I know you guys are still from my perspective, you guys are wonderful people to learn from and talk to, and I definitely look up to you guys as well. But just from the small conversation we had here, but I know that you guys are still building, and I'm excited to see where you guys go in the future, and and just thank you for being so willing to share and be open and share the knowledge that you guys have. Especially because, you know, you don't have to do this kind of stuff. You don't have to be on these podcasts or share your wisdom. You don't need to do this, especially with a small podcast like mine. So I just want to share appreciation that you guys are even here and doing this for us. To all the people at home, thank you guys so much for watching. And I'm sure you guys learned just as much as I did. So if you feel like you learned a lot, go ahead and share this podcast with the world, as many people as you can. So again, thank you, Nikko. Thank you, Kokie.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us, man.
Of course. My
See you
pleasure.
guys.